if you listened to us last week, or listened to me last week, I said the Guardians would come away from the winter meetings with a starting pitcher. Turns out I was just a few days early on that, and I had the player wrong. But the Guardians do have a new old starting pitcher back in the fold. Shane Bieber's back. We'll get into that. We'll get into some other quote-unquote rumors going around before the start of winter meetings and how the Juan Soto deal impacts the Guardians this offseason and into the draft.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel.com. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. My screen just went black, so I'm hoping that all went through for you.
Yep, I hear you. Everybody's going black right now because everyone's stunned by the Juan Soto news going to the Mets and all the money there. That does have some, I guess, impact on Cleveland. We'll get into that later in the show, but we said last week that the Guardians were going to sign a starting pitcher during the winter meetings. Winter meetings are already off to a great start. A lot of stuff's already happening. One thing happened for the Guardians, and the Juan Soto coming off the board kind of degums things and could potentially make things more interesting happen. So it should be a fun week. I don't know. Are the winter meetings back? Like, we actually have some fun things to talk about from the winter meetings for the first time in a long time?
I mean, it's been a brisk pace of movement this year. That much is for sure. They've been, there's been a lot of little bits and things going on. It was nice to see Cleveland get in and active before the winter meetings. Can't remember the last time that happened.
They signed the first free agent of the season in Austin Hedges. That was the first free agent signing, I think.
I'm just ignoring your statements. Moving beyond that one. But yeah, it's one of those things where we're seeing things happen. It's good for the sport that it's not so delayed. And it's going to be interesting because right now, the Yankees and Hal Steinbrenner are going to be put through the ringer. And I know that's not their favorite thing. And I'm curious to see I don't think they're going with Pete Alonso. I don't think they're that reactionary. I think everyone kind of knows the book is out on Alonso and that he peaked a few years ago. But I'm curious to see if they split their money, how this goes. From there, what the Mets do, they're in kind of a weird spot as well so far. But yeah, the Soto deal is it's a lot of money in a lot of years, and that's why baseball players don't want a salary cap right there. Every time everyone's like, you need a salary cap, that deal is why baseball players don't want a salary cap.
Nope, and that salary cap impacts Shane Bieber, or the lack of salary cap impacts Shane Bieber. And a salary cap, maybe he gets less money, but he's coming back to Cleveland, as reported on Friday night.
Reportedly, he took less money to come back.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure. He took less money to come back. So what we know about the deal now is it's potentially a 2-year deal. It's a 1-year deal with a player with a player option for the second year. So he either gets $10 million in 2025, and if he picks up the option in 2026, it's $16 million for that next year. If he doesn't pick up the option for 2026, he gets $4 million in a buyout to give him 14. So it could be as much as 14. It could be as much as 26 for Shane Bieber and the Guardians. So the Guardians, I don't know, it kind of feels like the Guardians are handling a lot of the risk on this one. Like, there's not a lot of downside here for Bieber. There is some downside here for the Guardians, obviously. I don't think it's a lot, but I think that they are assuming you're not getting a starting on this deal.
You're not getting, a starting pitcher for $10 million. Like, I think in some regards that's why it's like I think both sides limited risk with this one.
I don't know. I don't see a whole lot of risk for Shane Bieber because he's getting $14 million if he has a great year in 2020.
Yeah, but I'm saying both sides had limited risk. Like for Cleveland, it's $10 million. I see
what you're saying. Limited risk.
I'm saying both sides limited their risk. I mean, they've done. I mean, this is like the Zunino deal all over again. It was like he was like just about this amount. Like they're okay running the gamble on essentially a 1-year deal at about this amount.
They have been, yeah. you get maybe, so Bieber is targeting a June or July return. We think that means back to the majors, which means his rehab time would probably start in April, because he had Tommy John at the end of April in 2024. So in theory, you're hoping he gets back on the mound in May, I guess, to make some rehab starts the month of May in the minors, and then he's back in June or July, or he's back on the mound in June in the minors and comes back in July. I think you're getting more out of him than you do Matt Boyd, obviously, but the big question is going to be, like, we were both stunned by how good Matt Boyd was coming off of Tommy John. Like, he essentially came right in and pitched better than he'd ever had in most of his career, right? And with control, which is usually not something you get. Control is usually the last thing to come back from Tommy John. And I'm eager to see what he looks like, because the 2 starts Bieber had in 2024 were incredible, and we know he was doing that with an elbow that was falling apart. What can he, can he get back to who he was with a healthy elbow, which he essentially hasn't had since 2022 at this point, because he didn't have it in 2023 either. But you have to, you never can assume that a guy coming right off of Tommy John is going to come back and be immediately the guy he used to be. Sometimes it takes time. Boyd was an aberration. Hopefully Bieber is better than Boyd, and you get more starts from him, because hopefully he's coming back in June, if not early July, and you get some more starts out of him. And if he has a great year in 2025, you have the option of he's going to opt out and go back on the market, which is great for him. And Cleveland might have the option of giving him a qualifying
offer,
which that's great for both sides, because then Bieber pitches well. That means the Guardians are better in 2025, in theory, and you can give him the qualifying offer. The downside, obviously, is if he doesn't pitch well, he picks up the offer for the next year, the option. You're probably not as, although they survived without Bieber this year, so who knows? Comes back in 2026, maybe he's the best version of himself in 2026. You could still do the qualifying offer then. Maybe you're better in 2026 because of him. So, yeah, I guess you're right. There is limited downside for both sides. In theory, he'll be better in 26 if he's not as good in 25.
Yeah, that's, I think, essentially what it all comes down to, because when you're looking at it and you're looking at the going rate for a 5th starter in free agency is honestly something like 17 million. Like, that's what we're seeing is the going rate. So to get him for 10 million, they're hoping he'll Boyd it, maybe be, a little bit more than Boyd in terms of like time availability. But this is very similar to that situation. We saw Matt Boyd go out and get a, with less history of success and more. Well, I don't know if anyone's had more health issues than Shane Bieber, honestly, over the last few years.
I mean, Boyd's had 2 arm surgeries. Bieber's got 1.
I know, but Bieber's missed 3 out of the last 4 years with health. Like, I don't know if there's any other pitcher whose name isn't Daniel Espino who you can say that about. But you're taking the gamble. That's the thing. Like, yes, he took less money to stay. We don't know the specifics on that. We're just told that, but I don't think he took a ton less money. Let's be pretty honest with that. I think, I also have to sit here and say, like, I was wrong. I had always heard he was kind of interested in leaving, but I also get the whole idea of comfort and what and I think a lot of times we all forget, the value in comfort and the known. Yeah. And I think that, like, especially in rehabbing an injury, he probably felt like, if he's going to get to his best outcome, let's be someplace that I feel comfortable and that I know what the expectation is, and I know that they can help me get to my best self. But the other thing, really, honestly, with Bieber is, like, yeah, he got paid last year and he got paid pretty well the year before that, but in his first chance at free agency, he didn't really have much of a chance in free agency. Like, let's be honest, the health really derailed his opportunities. So he wants to come back, get healthy, get himself kind of fully on that board so he can go out and, get the big money. And, maybe they get a qualifying offer in a year. I think, like, no matter what happens, though, it's like they gave him 2 amounts of money that are below what you expect to pay a 5th starter. So I think it makes sense for Cleveland. I think, it makes sense for Bieber to a degree. I think he's kind of shortchanging himself, but if this is where you're comfortable, then that is more valuable than a few extra million. So maybe not in my life, but in Shane Bieber's life, it is. So, I get why these sides came together, and it was definitely a pleasant surprise. I did not expect it. It's also kind of funny that he got less than Matt Boyd, even though he's 6 years his junior,
And has a Cy Young on his resume, even if it
has
was
the Cy Young on his
2020.
resume, which again goes back to and Matt Boyd's had 2 good years, 3 good years if you count last year. Like he has not had a really good career.
He's never made an all-star team. Bieber's been on the all-star team. Like, not that really matters for much, but
Bieber's had like 3 or 4 good years. Like it's very different, but somehow he got less. So I think that health, the spate of injuries really kind of tamped down his market, and right now Cleveland's benefiting. And again, it doesn't necessarily help him at the start. They definitely need to figure out how they're going to work this rotation out. But the other piece of insurance he might honestly be is Tristan McKenzie insurance. If you put McKenzie out there and give him every opportunity to start, if you're talking about a return by June, that's when this team often makes moves and switches around the rotation. And if McKenzie isn't working out, or if they want to go make the big move, by the time Bieber's ready to go, that's when they often make a change in the rotation if they feel someone's ready to go. It's like, I believe Bieber was a June call-up back in the day.
May. I think he was end of May. It was around his birthday.
End of May. Yeah,
he made his debut on his birthday, and I can't remember if that's May or June, but yeah.
I think it was end of May, beginning of June. But that's the point in time where you see these guys. So it's like he might be at the end of the day, he might be the Allen, the McKenzie, he might be insurance on someone else as well.
May 31st. So right on the cusp of June. Yeah, right there. Yeah, let's be honest. Like, first of all, cue the this will be the Guardians trade deadline acquisition, Shane Bieber, right? That's going to be the default for everybody, and it may or may not be true. We'll see.
I don't think it will be, because we've talked about many times why they seem to be doing a very distinct approach to their draft and their planning.
Bieber thing is especially the same as the Boyd thing, but
yeah,
let's be clear. Shane Bieber's not back with Cleveland if he's healthy all of last season, because the way he started off, if he pitches that way the whole year, obviously he would get him a run at some point. He didn't give a run in his 2 starts, but let's be clear, he would not be back in Cleveland. So don't sit here. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, this is a great move for Cleveland, great move by Cleveland, because Bieber's not back in Cleveland if he's healthy all last year. He is definitely, getting greener pasture somewhere else, wherever that might be. But yeah, there was always this talk about him wanting to go west, and maybe that was true. Maybe an offer out west just never materialized. There was the Red Sox were in on him. We don't really know who else was in on him, but supposedly it was the Red Sox. It's a great look for Cleveland in terms of the fact he did turn down more money to stay. I don't know how much. And like you said, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3 million, whatever it is. That's, negligible to the price of comfort and the training staff, which I was watching MLB Network's reaction to the deal. And it was Yonder Alonso, who obviously played here in 2018. And he said it was the best training staff he'd ever been around. And he knows that the training staff has your back and they have a plan for you every single day. You know exactly what you're doing. You can trust them. So there is a lot of comfort factor in that. So that's a great selling point for Cleveland, that first Jose Ramirez takes less money to stay and he's healthy. And then Bieber, that's, the only way they're retaining some of their biggest stars is if guys turn down more money. So I'm not going to give them a ton of credit, but it's great for the front office because they've built the culture here where team players do trust them and they do want to be here. And that's what you have to do if you're not going to go out and spend the kind of money it takes to re-sign a healthy Shane Bieber. You have to create the kind of culture that makes them want to come back under dire, unique circumstances. They did that. So I think this can both work for both sides. We both agree that this makes sense for both sides. We'll address whether or not when this will get announced, because the winter meetings are coming up. You got Rule 5, all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that. We'll get into if this takes the Guardians out of the starting pitching market the rest of the way. We'll get into some trade rumors, quote unquote trade rumors, and we'll get into how this stuff, the Soto effect stuff, affects the Guardians' draft status. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, you can skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide on their cyber sale over at omahasteaks.com. You can get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 with promo code MLB. Omaha Steaks has 5 generations of experience. They consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. Their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift throughout the year. Curated packages starting at $89.99. So from legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners are going to get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. So get out there and buy your steaks from Omaha. That's 50% off at Omaha Steaks, OMAHA steaks.com, and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase may apply. So, Jeff, I don't think the Guardians will be announcing the Shane Bieber deal. I'm curious to see how they approach the questions at the winter meetings, because obviously reporters are already there, the GMs and everybody else is already there. The first thing they're going to get asked on Monday by reporters is about Shane Bieber, and the deal's not official yet. I have no idea how physicals work when it's a guy who clearly is rehabbing. Clearly they know that the medicals, though, so it's not a big deal. But are they going to wait until after the Rule 5 draft to make this move official? So that means the whole week they won't be able to actually talk about it, or will they actually make it official before the Rule 5 draft? Because right now they do have an open spot on the 40-man roster.
You know, I bet it gets done before then. I mean, there's a chance maybe they're like, hey, let's hold it, but like, I don't see them. I've been reading some Rule 5 previews. I have my own experience. Like, it's not a great Rule 5 class. Like, I don't think there's anyone that jumps out at me where I'm like, you know, this is going to be, and you know, even going through like De Los Santos last year was an interesting gamble. He was an interesting gamble because he was like from low A, and they decided to take the gamble there and try. They didn't keep him, but you know, he was a top prospect. We knew he was a top prospect. There aren't even those guys. There's not someone like him in this year's class. Like, it's just, it's not an outstanding, like Ryan Ward is like the power bat everyone talks about, but it's like, he's, I don't know, like he is only that. Like, there's just not a lot of anything in this. So I bet it just gets on. He gets added to the 40-man. And then, hey, it's another guy with Henches and everyone else who once February starts, they're going to clear up a ton of 40-man spots. Like, they are going to have all of these spots on their roster that makes it quite easy to stash and move, or to go out and offer guys, you know, those minor league contracts where you can easily convert them. And because everyone knows like what teams have that ability. And, you know, especially like the Dodgers are a team that do that all the time.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how they handle it this week, whether or not you're right. The Rule 5 draft is not great. So maybe Cleveland looks at that and says, we'll just get the deal official this week before the Rule 5 and avoid all that. So, yeah, maybe it doesn't end up coming into play here. I'll just be curious to see when they can start talking about it. Because, you know, again, Monday morning, there's going to be a lot of questions about it in Dallas, and it may or may not be official or whatever. So does this take the Guardians out of doing anything else on the pitching market, whether it's a free agent or trades? Do you think they're done?
Yep, they're just gonna pack it in. They're done. That's all their money. They're gonna go home and their house with their poor. No, I don't think it takes them out of things. We talked about, like, right now you got Tanner, and then you got complete uncertainty across the board. Like, we don't know what Gavin's gonna be. We don't know what Tristan McKenzie. We don't know about, and you know, Ben Lively, can he replicate? He's the king of the option, but he might have just had a career year as a dude who I believe is in his 30s, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like there are just question marks galore. So I don't think you can sit there and be like, yeah, we got Shane Bieber, and if we're lucky, he'll be back in June. If we're unlucky, end of July, and say that's good enough. So if you followed me at all throughout what we talked about here on the show, it's like I had them at about 20 million in savings. Here's 10 of it. And honestly, like 4 million of it is getting paid out at the end of the year. So that kind of almost counts as this season. So it's in a lot of ways this year is like a 1 year, $14 million contract. And I'm sure in their personal finance accounting of it, they're listing it at 14 and then, hey, 4 million, if not. Like, I don't think that 4 million, they're counting it in, assuming that he's going to take that. So that leaves them about 6, unless you count that draft money. So maybe there's a chance there's another 15. I don't know if there's more free agents to be had. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of great trades out there to be had. So it's going to be hard to find that pitching depth, but I don't think they should be done.
I don't think so either. I'm not sure about trades. We'll get into that in the last segment, where we talk about rumors that, again, aren't really rumors, but we'll talk about it. You know, we talked about Griffin Canning last week, how that might be an option for them. You know, there's still Andrew Heaney out there, who a lot of people think makes sense for Cleveland, and he could be a guy that gives you some depth as well. He's not, you know, he came off his second best year of his career last year, and he's a free agent, and He's 33, probably 34 next year.
I
He
got
could be a
him right
guy.
in his draft year.
Yeah.
I had him to the Marlins just because Stan Meek loved everyone from Oklahoma back when he was the guy for Florida Florida then Marlins. So it's like, oh yeah, they'll take the Oklahoma kid because Stan Meek was the scouting director who didn't believe in leaving his home state.
Well, it didn't work out great for them. Well, they traded him, didn't they?
No, it does not. It does not work out well at all. I would not recommend it.
But he had a decent career. He had a not so great career at the Angels, and then he's had 2 good years with Texas. I would say not great, but okay. Maybe that's an option, something like that. A guy that's not going to cost them more than $5 million on the market. I'm not sure what Heaney is going to get. I do think Cannon comes in around there, but the trade thing is going to be hard because, like, there's rumors that quote unquote the Mariners will list on Luis Castillo. We don't know how. Again, and listening and shopping are 2 very different things. And Luis Castillo costs a ton of money. I don't think the Guardians have a major league piece to trade them to make it work for Castillo because the Mariners are trying to win next year, or they want to claim they're trying to win, even though they're not all that serious. But a lot of teams are in that same boat where they keep saying, well, we want to win, but they're not actually taking steps to win. But I don't think them trading Castillo really helps them as much. And I don't think Cleveland's got a major league piece to give the Mariners for that. So yeah, trading is going to be a lot of hard. So I think is going to be really tough. So I don't know. I think they almost have to go out and add another pitcher on the market somehow, because whether that's a minor league deal, whether that's a major league deal, I think they have to go out and add one because I don't know. I'd almost prefer you start the year with Logan Allen in AAA because there are still things to work out. Like you can't tell him from spring training. He can come to spring training in the best shape of his life. We always hear that, right? And I don't think shape was ever an issue with Logan Allen, but he can come to spring training and unless he's throwing 97, which we know is not happening, like you can't infer anything from spring training results. So I'd almost rather see Logan Allen go back to AAA and have that as your first call up along with Joey Cantillo, because you've already got to put McKenzie on the opening day roster anyway. So I'd rather have somebody else in that rotation and let them either fail or do great, and leave Logan in AAA for one more year and see if he can force his way back up.
Agreed. If there's one thing you know about me, it is that you cannot trust anything at all from spring training. That's just asking to.
I love spring training, but you're 100% right. It's
like
you can enjoy watching it, but you can't trust really anything that comes from it. All right, there are some quotes out there. I don't want to call them rumors, Jeff. I don't want to call them rumors. That a team is.
I would call them baloney. I
call them this. Okay, we argued last week about Ken Rosenthal's column, and you said it was filler. I said Ken Rosenthal thing wasn't filler. I think this is filler. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about how the Juan Soto and other signings impact the Guardians this offseason and in trades.
You know, last time we had FanDuel on here, I talked about how I felt like I jinxed the Blue Jackets. Well, they won today, so maybe that's over. Maybe it's time to get back on the Blue Jackets train. You know, it's always good to bet against the Browns. That seems to be a recipe for success. Bet against them making right decisions, bet against them winning games, bet against them being entertaining. Can you bet on those things? I don't know. But right now, tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
So the Reds apparently have, quote unquote, kicked the tires. I never kicked a tire before, but I have.
I have.
It's not a great feeling when you kick the tire, right? You're trying to test it for its pressure. So does that mean the Reds are trying to put pressure on the Guardians about Josh Naylor and Lane Thomas? I don't know. Never really works out for me. I can never tell the tire pressure from kicking a tire. I usually use my my pressure gauge personally.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Not this. This whole article, it felt like
filler.
Crap.
This felt like filler.
I mean, this was just like, it's what we've talked about before. Like, they've kicked the tires on him, but nothing is. It's like called and just did a gauging of interest, talking about air gauges, like which we know teams do. Like it's the same thing. Cleveland isn't shopping these guys, though. The article, I think, misrepresented it to a small degree, where they said they were shopping them. I don't think they are shopping their players. Again, anyone on this team they will talk about. Outside of Jose, he's got a no trade. They can't trade him. But I think anyone on this team, they're like, okay, yeah, that's, I mean, if nothing else, it is a thought exercise for them to allow them to properly figure out the values of players. I think they will sit there and talk to any team on anyone. So I think this is all, unfortunately, much ado about nothing. And you and I have talked about this. Like, there's a weird logic to it. Like Lane Thomas, Jake Fraley. Like I said, if the Reds didn't keep Fraley, it would have made sense for Cleveland to get him because it looks like a good platoon. Naylor, they got Candelario, and yeah, he could technically play third for them if you're waiting on Marte, but he's not good there anymore. Like they don't have a natural spot for Naylor, more than likely. I don't know. And it's an awkward trade to figure out. And it just feels, again, like people looking for things to write about. And it's a great story because, well, Tito doesn't know Lane. He, of course, has a previous relationship with Josh. So then it becomes like kind of fun to talk about with in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure somebody told, it's Gordon Whitmire of the Cincinnati Enquirer, and I'm sure somebody told him, hey, they've called about Josh Naylor and Lane Thomas, and that's great. I mean, teams have conversations all the time in the offseason. This is why we were joking last week about the Chris Antonetti quotes, which we won't put Jeff through again today, even though he did great.
Yeah, I crushed that.
Yeah, you did. Teams did better than my wife. I quizzed her before, and she did terrible. And you were both teachers too, and I the joke for another day. But I just don't see a match between these two. And this, I'm sure someone told this guy, yeah, they called about Naylor and Thomas. That's a rumor. Teams have conversations all the time, so. Yeah, he's going to report it. He's going to say, yeah, they had a conversation. That's great. But you know what? The Cubs, the Mariners, the Rangers, I don't know. I mean, every team, probably not the Twins because they won't trade the Twins, but like most the Yankees and I don't know about the Yankees, but the Mets probably haven't called about those guys. But like they're having conversations with everybody. And if they haven't had one yet, they probably will at some point on teams that need offensive help from those two positions, possibly. So, everyone's going to have those conversations. I thought the Ken Rosenthal thing was a little more substantial than this. I know you didn't agree with that, but this to me is, yeah, it's just, hey, yeah, they called. Okay, great. Like nothing about this to me is worth running about and saying, well, this could happen. The Reds might trade for him. No, because you and I were like, okay, what? Let's try to make some
We
sense.
gave it more time than it deserved to be given.
Right. We spent like a good half hour before the show, like, looking at the Reds roster up and down the system, and we're like, all right, so we know the Guardians want to get better in 2025 from trading Josh Naylor, right? If they do that, I know we got a lot of comments saying, why do you guys want to trade Naylor? We don't necessarily want to trade Naylor. It's that we think Cleveland will if it gets a good offer because it fits their MO. And to steal your line, there's a world where if you trade Naylor for pitching or whatever, and you add a Carlos Santana or you add a Yandy Diaz, there's a chance you're better in 2025 because you're a deeper team and you have, Manzardo to take over or whatever. The Naylor thing makes some sense from that respect, but if they're going to trade Naylor, it's got to make them better for this year coming up, not worse. It's not a step back. And you and I were just looking through the Reds roster, and it's like there's just really no one in the system or on the Major League roster where trading Naylor to them or even Lane Thomas makes any sense. Like I can't, we talked about could you add a player to Thomas or Naylor and get Nick Lodolo, or is there a prospect where you could flip a prospect to another team, like a three-way deal, like Naylor to the Reds, you get a prospect and that prospect lands you something better from another team. I don't know. You and I didn't see a match there in terms of Naylor's value, Thomas's value, what the Reds have, what makes sense for the Guardians. I don't see a fit on that roster for any of these trades. Like, I just don't see how it benefits the Guardians to deal with the Reds. There doesn't seem to be a match.
Because right now, what does Cleveland need? And why'd they go and get they need pitching, but the other big thing they need just in general is consistency, right? So it's like they're, and when you look at offensive consistency, they don't have many guys who provide that. And honestly, you got Jose, you have Josh, and Lane Thomas. Like, I liked the Cincinnati article. It's like, well, he had a down year with the suboptimal WRC plus of 99. I'm like, dude, like 99 would have been good for either of our teams a year ago. That just either shows a lack of information or trying to like goose the situation. Lane Thomas is fine, but he at least has a history of being at least about league average, if not above. Cleveland can't trade consistency. Like, I know there's people out there like who might like Strand or Spear, but it's like those guys regressed pretty hard in year 2. Will Benson, like you can't make a trade and trade 2 guys who have had consistent production over the last 5 years for question marks. You can't.
No.
Like, you're trying to contend.
The other thing I'm trying to think about too, like Lane Thomas, like if Cleveland really does trade Lane Thomas, what does that signal? Because my only thought on if there is any interest by Cleveland in moving him for something, you've got to have a contingency plan. Because like as of right now, recording this, Lane Thomas is your opening day center fielder. So if you trade him, you've almost got to have something else in the works. Like I'm trying to think about what the circumstances are where it would make sense to trade Lane Thomas, because what else do you have lined up if you do that? That's the only way I can make sense of them moving Lane Thomas is if they get bowled over by an offer that just has more value for them, right? We know that, but you have to have a contingency plan. Like you can't. There's not a whole lot of ways it makes sense for them to trade him. Like there has to be a specific set of circumstances in place for Cleveland regarding center field for next year for them to trade Thomas right now.
I think we've all kind of seen enough of the Brennans and the Freemans to be like, that is not the answer, right? Like, is there anyone left who thinks that's the answer? I'm just kind of curious. Comment below with that if there's anyone left.
I feel like I was the last guy on the Will Brennan Island, so
yeah, it just you don't give Bieber that contract unless you're at least have some faith and ability, because you're throwing money. Yeah, one could say it's like, well, you're also balancing out with the potential for a qualifying offer, but it's a big gamble still that he's going to, be healthy, because he hasn't been. So I think you can't. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And the Reds the reason they fell back so hard this year was because they have so much inconsistency, and it just all of it sets up for a situation where it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm sure they called and talked, because Cleveland, again, will call and talk with anyone. They're very friendly people there. It's that good culture we were just talking about, right? Like,
I'm sure Tito would love to have Josh Naylor back.
But yeah,
as long as he wears a helmet.
I know. I think it's much ado about nothing, and we're going to continue to see these fluff pieces, and then we'll get people clout chasers on Twitter and Blue Sky making up baloney rumors. And it's, again, just digital media literacy. Know who to follow. Don't follow jokes.
I mean, some places have made it harder to be media literate these days. I will say that. It's true. I used to say that, it's not that hard, but not that hard. But I mean, I used to be harder on people for not being more digital media literate. But, X and Twitter and other places have made it, and how things are reported have made it much harder to be more media literate these days. But that's neither here nor there. So before we get out of here today, Juan Soto is a Met for the biggest bank in the world. He's got more money than Shohei Ohtani, which none of this. He got more money on the whole than Ohtani, and none of it's deferred, which is crazy. So Juan Soto gets big payday. How does this impact the Guardians, Jeff, in terms of a draft standpoint?
So we've got
this weekend.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Adames as well. So the interesting thing is, if we look at the Soto deal, it will cost the Mets a second and fifth, because if you are someone who pays in the competitive balance tax, which I believe is only the Mets and Yankees this past year, you lose a second and a fifth. And the other thing is they lose a good chunk of international signing bonus money too. Just something to keep in the back of your head with the Sasaki situation, right? Like all of these signings are affecting these teams' abilities to offer money to Roki Sasaki. So, I don't think I have the correct one. Oh no, do I still have it here? Yeah. So for the teams that pay into it, let me go here. They lose $1 million from their national pool is what the Mets lose. That's a big amount.
Yeah. So they're probably out on Sasaki. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, San Francisco, if we want to. So this moves them up because it's the Mets second, actually falls behind Cleveland's. This will move Cleveland up in the competitive balance, the third and the fourth, one spot, which if we go back to the Severino deal means the competitive balance, third and fourth have all now moved up 2 spots, and their second rounder has moved up 1. That's in Oakland, I guess, is out of Sasaki, though they only lose.
Yeah, that was totally going to happen.
That was going to happen. I guess, no, they don't lose any money. So they're still in. And then the Giants are, I believe, non-competitive players, but they're not revenue sharing recipients. So so with this one, again, this was the big one for Cleveland. They move up. And when I say the Mets get a fourth, they get a pick technically after the fourth, before the fifth.
Yankees
But picks moving around. So this is the Severino one. And then that's what the Yankees get as well. And then the Adames signing. So there's a new first rounder. But San Francisco would have picked before Cleveland in the second, so it all balances out. Nothing really happens. You don't move up. The Brewers get a pick in the 30s for Adames going there, and then the Giants lose $500,000. So maybe that affects. I mean, I think they probably didn't have much of a chance at Roque just because of where they are. And I mean, yeah, Logan Webb's a great story, but Kyle Harrison hasn't quite read. It's not like the huge developmental pipeline with the Giants. I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong there.
My curiosity now is, do the Yankees or Mets have interest in Josh Naylor? You said no on the Mets. I wonder if the Yankees have interest in Josh Naylor.
I mean, that's going to be an awkward team, right? Like the whole rock the baby situation. Yeah. And there's so many free agent first basemen. I also think there's just a good chance that maybe they go get a Santander, get a Christian Walker.
Yeah, you could put Jock Peterson at first base, maybe.
There's always the talk that they would go get you've brought up before, Clay Bellinger and
Cody Bellinger. He's out. Trade for him.
Yeah, Clay is who played for them, but and first base production is down across baseball.
Santana's out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to go, which is part of like why we've talked about where there's a world where Cleveland might look to flip Naylor for pitching, and then also trying to save money on the deal to go out and find ways, because Santana is probably going to make half as much as Naylor makes.
Right. I thought I brought up like the Mets because they're going to lose Alonso now, but you brought up they'll move Mark Vientos to first base, so that probably takes them out of the Naylor thing too. So I don't know. And we also said they don't have much in depth to trade pitching wise because the Reds don't, and the Yankees.
The Mets might have a little bit of pitching depth to trade. Like McGill might be out of a spot, and you and I both kind of liked him. Blackburn might not have a spot.
I think it's pretty iffy at best.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah, but it should be a interesting week at the winter meetings. Juan Soto's off the board. The Guardians are got a major free agent for them. Shane Bieber, even if he was one of their old guys, that's an impactful signing for them. I guess they won't trade him, right? Like if the things are not going well for the Guardians, I don't know if there's enough time to trade him if he's pitching well.
I mean, it all depends on the offer. It depends how well he is pitching and how desperate teams get.
Yeah, or if the qualifying offer is a better deal for them. I don't know. Hopefully that won't be the case. Hopefully he's pitching well and the Guardians are playing well, and things just make a ton of sense. But it should be an interesting week. There's things that are moving. I'm hopeful because things are starting to move that we'll have some impactful winter meetings stuff to talk about, some rumors. So we'll be back in your feeds tomorrow. We'll talk about the first day of the winter meetings. If there's any quotes from Chris Antonetti that are real and not AI generated, we'll talk about those. If not, we'll talk about some other positions in the Guardians team to see how they can improve those this offseason. We will get to a Rule 5 preview this week. We will do that, but just be forewarned, for Rule 5, there's not much to talk about. We'll talk about who the Guardians could lose. We'll talk about if there's anyone they can
also
add.
Got the MLB draft lottery this week.
Yeah, so our plan Tuesday is to live stream like we did a year ago. Obviously, the Guardians aren't in the lottery this year, but our plan is to be here and talk about it. And we'll talk about the Guardians pick. We'll talk about the draft in general. We'll be here live streaming it with you if you want to be part of that.
Yeah. It's a need that Major League Baseball doesn't fill. So we're going to fill it. We're going to provide that information. So instead of it being a commercial for a country music person who's going to come and do a tour, it'll be actually about baseball. So we're going to provide that because we had fans from everywhere a year ago. So
we enjoyed it last year. We'll be back in this show. We'll do Trade Talk Thursday this week as well. We'll recap the whole winter meetings at the end of the week. We'll probably do a mailbag this week as well. So stay tuned for that. It's our last week of 5 days of shows until spring training. So enjoy being with us 5 days a week, being every day or all week, and Go back and listen to some old shows if you haven't yet.
Yep.
And we'll be here all week, and we'll be here 3 days a week starting next week until spring training. So stick with us for winter meeting stuff this week.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to rate and review, download daily. Download daily. That's the big thing.
Yes.
Thank you all for tuning in, and